All right, let's jump right in. If you've ever stared at a blank, blinking cursor wondering how on earth you're supposed to write a heavily factual paper without putting yourself and your teacher to sleep, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're turning that daunting syllabus into an easy-to-digest study guide with this explainer on the core mechanics of expository writing. We're going to break down exactly what your instructors are actually asking for when they assign this kind of work.
Looking at our agenda for this explainer, we're covering what expository writing is, exploring the key types, looking at the essential writing process, spotting bias and fact-checking, and finally, sharing facts with style. Let's get to it. Section 1. What is expository writing? Debunking the myth of the boring essay.
So what are we really doing here? The absolute core of expository writing is right there in the name. You are exposing the facts. Your primary goal is to educate. Think about the super clear information you get from textbooks, technical guides, or straight-up news reports. Unlike a lot of the media we consume every day, the goal here isn't to entertain your reader, and it is definitely not an attempt to persuade them to join your side of an argument. You are simply the messenger, delivering the objective truth to deepen the reader's understanding. And because of that, you have some pretty strict boundaries. On the left side here, you can see what it is. Highly logical, linear, and purely objective. On the right side, we see what it is not. It's not an avenue for your personal opinion or a subjective attempt to persuade. It also shouldn't jump around in some non-linear, unconventional timeline. Seriously, if you find yourself trying to convince your teacher that a specific position is the right one, you've accidentally slipped into persuasive writing.
But hey, just because we're sticking to the strict rules doesn't mean your writing has to be a total snooze fest. Think about the thrilling docuseries Cosmos. It guides you through the evolution of the universe, and it's honestly an absolute masterclass in engaging expository writing. The screenwriters are totally bound by scientific facts and objectivity, yet they use incredible narrative structure to make those facts absolutely captivating. You can do the exact same thing in your essays.
Moving on to Section 2, exploring the key types, or categorizing your tools. Okay, take a look at this table. These are your go-to tools, and you really want to lock these in. Notice the classification type. That is when you're explaining the characteristics of multiple subjects within a single category. And then there's the process type, which literally explains how a process works step by step, like a troubleshooting guide or a recipe. And of course, you've got your classic compare and contrast essay, which is perfect for laying out the similarities and differences between, say, two historical figures. You'll also run into the problem in solution format a ton. This one is heavily used for things like technical manuals or lab reports. You clearly outline a specific issue that exists, and then you explore the most effective, factual solution for it. What you should really take away from this is that once you figure out which of these formats your teacher actually wants, half the battle of structuring your essay is already won.
All right, Section 3, the essential writing process, and why we really need to slow down.
So before you even think about typing a single word of your draft, you have to follow this steady chronological flow. Look at the steps. The very first step isn't drafting, it's brainstorming. Then you move into deep research, followed by comprehensive outlining, and only then, at step 4, do you actually start drafting your paper.
Seriously, guys, this process is non-negotiable. With creative fiction, sure, you might just let inspiration flow right onto the page. But working with hard facts requires concrete strategy. Jumping straight to a draft is literally a recipe for a disorganized disaster. Your facts are going to be completely jumbled and your logic just won't flow. You have to slow down, brainstorm all your angles, and build a solid outline before drafting ever begins.
Let's dive into Section 4, spotting bias and fact-checking. Time to become a truth detective.
When you hit that research phase, you have to be on high alert for subjective opinions wearing a really good disguise. A perfect example is an advertorial. These are sponsored advertisements designed to look exactly like objective journalism. If you aren't careful, you might cite one of these thinking it's a hard fact, when in reality, it's just a paid promotion meant to push a specific agenda. Inadvertently using biased sources like this will absolutely ruin the credibility of your academic work.
So where do you find the actual truth when sources contradict each other? Look at this comparison here. Always check the publisher. On the left, we have scholarly articles, like your .edu or .gov sites. On the right, personal blogs and those advertorials we just talked about. A government or university website carries so much more unbiased weight than someone's personal blog. You've got to be a ruthless truth detective during research and lean heavily on those scholarly domains to protect your credibility. And finally, Section 5, sharing facts with style, engaging your reader.
Okay, so you've got your unbiased facts. How do you share them without putting people to sleep? You need to be creative but remain constrained. It's not a free-for-all on the page. Use literary devices like similes or juxtaposition very sparingly and only when they directly help clarify a complex fact for your reader. Instead of throwing in wild metaphors, rely on a highly engaging vocabulary, a really confident tone, and crystal clear sentence flow to keep your reader hooked.
So here is the big question to leave you with. How will you apply this structured process to brainstorm, research, and unbiasedly draft your very next expository assignment? Are you going to settle for a dry, boring list of facts, or are you ready to prove to your instructor that the absolute truth can actually be completely captivating? Keep your facts straight, watch out for that bias, and go tell the truth with style.